Watch it, but they can't cramp my style. Some man gonna dance just his style. The color just the one that they wear. Look on the color that here. Papa Jah say who care? Mass street up inna me ear. We no need them fooling near. Get one thing clear. Make up my own cross with beer. You protect them out of belief, but then you can't take believe out of them. And if you left the rapture, say mind the G. When you come back, that gun me friend. You protect them from out of belief, but then you can't take believe out of them. And if you left the rapture, say mind the G. When you come back, you know that gun me friend. Dog wearing bone, hair bone back. Dirty spoon, they stir, they start. Who the one you when you the one me? Coming in like busy bee. Every day get up and worry like crab in a barrel. Mistake you wrong, say had the veil. Think rough but still, all the beans you don't spill. Could have worked at the room and mill. Just moving saying nil. You say one can't pay your bill. You protect them.
Good evening. We're on. We're live, correct? All right, let me adjust my
Good evening.
situation. Greetings, sir. We're live, right? Yeah, man. All right, G. Michael Ried with you from Belize, and that's CY from New York City, pushing the buttons and flipping the switches, getting us ready for our weekly podcast. We do this every week, and we ask you to join us, whether it's on voicing comments or giving us criticisms, sharing situations that you're aware of. We try to interact and make this user-friendly. There are no sacred cows, no axes to grind, no agendas, political or otherwise. It is simply straight out staying in touch with each other, in particular our diaspora and those at home. We are one nation. Many of us have wandered abroad, and some are there for some time. But make no mistake, Belize is always in our hearts. I am expecting tonight a very special guest, and this is a gentleman who is an expert. He is practicing medicine on the island of Cayman, which has a substantial Belizean population, by the way, who also stay in touch with Belize. We are going to have to do more to try to get them on board and bring them into the fold, get them into the conversation and find out what's going on in their neck of the woods. Apparently, Cayman is a much more advanced, much more lucrative area than Belize is. Many of our Belizeans over there are doing well. Cayman does not have the type of homeless situation that we see in other places, certainly not in Belize, not the type in Los Angeles, which has its fair share of vagrants on the Skid Row circuit. Just about every major city in the world, though, does have its share of the poor, and I believe that the world would have to do more to alleviate that situation. We do have enough resources. Have you seen how much money has been spent on going to space, on weapons of mass destruction and anguish and pain? Just before exiting office, President Joe Biden has sent $6 billion with a B, billion more dollars worth of arms to fund the war and when they call it a war, now many people believe it's just a beatdown. The term genocide has been used, but they don't want to use that, and the media, the platforms that we have available have those. The algorithm identifies certain words and will limit your audience or limit even your time that you're allowed on. So We will stick with their term. There's a war, but there's a war that's very much one-sided, lopsided. It's unfortunate. Let us hope that the rumors that we have been hearing, talk of a ceasefire, this is badly needed in both the wars, of course, because there's the situation in Ukraine also, where many people are dying. That situation there could have been prevented from the very start. And I heard Donald Trump in a speech last week saying that Russia had to look out for himself because they were putting NATO bases in his backyard, and he could understand Putin not putting up with that. That is so very true. There are many who have said there were many off ramps leading up to that war, and Joe Biden refused to take any of them. I believe that is what cost Kamala Harris that election, and not the fact that she was a woman or black, but because she was bringing forward the policies of the Joe Biden administration that was war loaded. The whole war world was at war. We are not forgetting or just ignoring the situation in Sudan, the other war, the situation in Haiti. There are a number of unrest. The situation in Syria, of course, that is far from settled, although there have been a regime change. Look for more problems to continue there because both sides of that issue were pretty much they were strong. So, um, all right, I see my good friend from the island of Cayman, Dr. Alwin Almidi. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine, Mike. So nice to see you.
It's a pleasure, my doctor. It's a pleasure. I have not seen you since 2016, when
Yes.
you ably performed that procedure. It has been holding up, and I'll tell you, doc, was it not for that, I don't know where I'd be now, because certainly that leg has given me a leg to stand on, if you will. And I want to thank you very much for your skill and job. Doc, how long have you been practicing medicine on a whole?
Yeah, I've been practicing medicine since 2000, but I've been doing orthopedics since about from 2004 onwards. So I've been an orthopedic surgeon for almost 20 years now.
Wow. All right. That do you keep count of of the number of limbs that you have replaced or rectified?
Not entirely. I've kind of lost a little
I would think no.
count after some time, but we do maintain a logbook. So I do have a record of all my surgeries that are done, and they're recorded in the OR. So I have a list, and I always keep that list with me.
Dak, I want to get straight into this before we miss it, because you were telling me about a registry that's being
Yeah.
and that you are in fact a head person in the drive to register these people and have keep track of how they're
Yes.
doing. Is that it?
Yes, yeah. What I was telling you, Mike, was that we're looking to do what we call as a Caribbean joint registry, which will encompass all the Caribbean islands, and we're trying to see if we can, mostly the English-speaking Caribbean, but eventually we want to have something that will unify the entire Caribbean, to keep a record of how many joint replacements happen, how it is, how are they being performed, what's the outcomes of those, most of those joint replacements, what are the complications we are seeing, is there something unique that's happening in the Caribbean that's not happening in the rest of the world, given the demographics and the population of the Caribbean. So a lot of things, like for example, I'll tell you, in the Caribbean, we are endemic for sickle cell because of a lot of African descent as well, right? So what happens is we see a lot more load of sickle cell, and so we see a lot of younger patients with degenerated hips in their 30s. I just had a patient last 2 months ago that had to do a major hip revision, like a reconstruction for his primary hip, but because he had a completely deformed hip from having had avascular necrosis, which is a condition that happens in sickle cell patients commonly. And then he ended up with with multiple surgeries that then destroyed his joint growth cartilage when he was young. So it ended up with a severe, what we call as a shepherd's crook deformity of his femur. So his femur was completely bent and his leg was short by almost 3 to 4 centimeters, like about an inch and a half, I would say. And then so it was a complicated hip because I had to correct the deformity, but also I had to balance the ligaments and the muscles that had never really had a chance to develop. Those are challenges, unique challenges we'll face more commonly in this population than in other populations. So if we have so for example, in that same patient, he went to a couple of my other colleagues and they said that, oh, we'll have to do the surgery in 2 stages, not 1 stage, and you cannot do this, and you'll and I had a technique where I was able to correct it in 1 stage itself, and I have done that for earlier patients. So we say I had to tell him that we could do it this way, and in 1 stage I corrected his deformity with what we call as a subtrochanteric osteotomy technique, and then ended up restoring his length as well. And he doesn't have to, and he had the hip replacement all in 1 sitting. So kind of education of those techniques, development of newer techniques, understanding what's the demographics of that population, and so having a Caribbean Joint Registry, much like similar to the cancer registry, gives you an idea of what you're dealing with in the Caribbean and to what extent, and then you can make educated, decision, and others would benefit out of the decisions that some surgeons have made, and then see what the results of those are, and then end up with, a better quality of care that's provided to its population.
Doctor, you mentioned the Caribbean and you mentioned the islands. Belize is neither, actually. Are we going to try to get Belize included in that? I know you have a soft spot in your heart for Belize, and we hope to get you here at some point soon in the future, no?
True.
So would Belize be included in that list of maybe place me on that registry so we see how that is going?
Yeah. So Belize, for some reason, sometimes it's considered part of the Caribbean as well. I think Guyana as well is considered very much a part of the Caribbean. Though in our Caribbean Association, I haven't seen many Belizean doctors there, but we'd love to have them over and to join, because we are a smaller part of the of the globe,
The wider world,
because we are like small little islands, each having a smaller population. So people think we don't really matter because we're in smaller pockets, but together we are a huge force. So I think that's what we're kind of trying to achieve with the Caribbean registries, to bring all the areas together, because each of these islands have their challenges with regard to access to technology and access to implants. And sometimes the big companies only look at the US or the Canada or the bigger countries where they get larger business from, but then they forget to see the Caribbean as a whole. And then now they are looking at it and saying, oh my, okay, there's a huge opportunity here. So then you would see those implants being available, because even when I came to Cayman Islands 10 years ago, I was struggling to get the best implants, because they would say I just didn't have the numbers that was required. But to a year, I said, okay, no problem. Started off with what I could manage, but soon enough, I started ramping up the numbers. And when we were doing the numbers in a year and a half, I said, you know what, hold on here. This is my projected figures, and I want these technologies and these implants. And because I came from India, and coming from India, I felt the Caribbean was lacking in technology compared to the rest of the world. and to bring it up to speed, we had to show it's kind of the chicken and egg phenomena, whether you have the implants and you have the technology, you have the skill, and then you can give the numbers, but you cannot generate the numbers without having them in the first place. So so yeah, that was a bit of the unique challenge that I faced when I came to Cayman many years ago. Because remember, the Cayman Islands took a step towards doing a lot of medical tourism patients, and trying to, because with the kind of investment that Narayana and the hospitals did there, we needed to get patients from other places to keep the business and the thing going. So a lot of that focus was on trying to develop a part of the Caribbean that was considered first world, but really had didn't have access to all the implants. I was quite surprised to know that when I came here. But then eventually we've developed it, and now, yeah, more and more companies are seeing bigger islands like Jamaica, Barbados, and other places, and even Cayman. We are seeing more interest from the companies in partnering with surgeons to enable to provide advanced orthopedic care to the patients. I had one interesting PowerPoint that I prepared. It was something that I made for CARFA to try and get the Caribbean Public Health Agency to partner with us in doing this Caribbean Joint Registry. And when I was researching my thing for the Caribbean Joint Registry, but also for this talk, I came across some very interesting figures. Osteoarthritis. Everybody talks about cancer, and everybody talks about heart disease and other things, and because those are like dramatic things, right, that actually hit you in the face and kind of get you very aware that someone's not going to live too long, or having a compromised quality of life or anything, right? But what people forget to see is the amount of disability that something like osteoarthritis is causing all over the world. So the global burden of osteoarthritis increased overall from 1990 to 2019, with the fastest growth from 2000 to 2010, because we started having population, because what happened, a lot of people started living longer. So when your life expectancy increased, you started developing more degenerative disease as you got older. And that's why you also have a slightly aging population that is young otherwise, in terms of who would want to go and do and be active, right, such as yourself. And if not for the joint issue, you would be probably much more active, much more, doing so much more in your years now. So similarly, the idea is to restore the quality of life. So if you look at some of these numbers, I'll just pull those up for you. The global prevalence of osteoarthritis has risen by about 48%. So in North America, there are 5,924 per 100,000 individuals, with hip osteoarthritis or knee osteoarthritis. Middle East is about 4,610 people per 100,000 population. In Australia, you're looking at 4,595 per 100,000 population. Now, if you look at the CARICOM countries, population of CARICOM countries, there is about, which is a population of 18 million. If you extrapolate those numbers, as about 7% of people that are affected, you would see 1.26 million people in the Caribbean who are diagnosed with osteoarthritis and are living with osteoarthritis.
That's a substantial figure, Doc.
Yeah, and remember, these are people who are, middle age to older,
working age,
and are in their socio-economic productive years. So they are in the years where they actually
productive,
significantly affected.
Doc, how is the science and technology moving along with the treatment of these?
Oh,
Are the hips getting?
tremendous. I
Yeah.
mean, tremendous compared to what it was when I started orthopedics, and I've seen in front of my eyes. I mean, joint replacements, hip and knee replacements were there, and there was. We knew that, oh, this was the thing, but it started really taking off extremely well around the 2000s, and then it got to a point where we have advancements in technologies, in robotics. Now we use robotics in knee and hip replacements. Then you have the improvement in the quality of implants. So now we've moved on to ceramics, and then now we've gone to ceramicized metals, which are like metal, which have the ductility of a metal but the hardness and smoothness of a ceramic. So those kind of implants and biomaterials were not available many years ago. Highly cross-linked polyethylene plastics. So basically, if I do a hip today, I can with and in like you have cemented hips and uncemented hips, and with
Correct.
cemented hips, the stems haven't done as well. The cups haven't done as well. The uncemented cups will last a lifetime. They last you 30, 40 years or more.
Wow.
So now we've almost completely stopped. Even hardcore countries like where they believed in the cemented cup, like in UK, they have all changed now to mostly uncemented cups.
I hope.
Because of that, and that was because of the registry, the UK Joint Registry. They saw that saw all the cemented cups, and they saw the uncemented cups, and they realized, oh, what's going on here? There's something wrong. The cemented cups are not lasting. Are lasting half the time as you life expectancy as you would have with the uncemented cup. So those brought about changes in the equipments, in the implants and technology. So now, with an uncemented hip in a young person, say if you had an uncemented hip, pretty much tell you that I could have expected you to go well into your 90s without ever having had to replace that thing. So that kind of confidence is not there with the earlier implants that were there. But so there has been significant advancements right now, I would say, and custom made hips and custom made knees. And we are customizing the hip and knee. The hips and knees come in different sizes of implants, different size of tibia, different size of femur, and we find out what exactly is the size that fits you. We do something called a templating, where we measure the sizes before surgery, and then we can template and we put a trial, and we make sure that yes, this is the correct size which fits your bone, your size of your bone, your size of your joint, size of your the balancing of your soft tissues, and then we can exactly put the hip that would be the best fit for you. So we basically customize the hips and the knees and everything for the patient. And what's gone one step further than that is computer navigation, and robotic knees. For you, when I did the knee, I think we used the navigation. I showed you those pictures and things that we used. It actually created a 3D model of the knee in the system, so it allows us to look at how the joint is going to behave even before you've put the actual implants in.
No,
So
no,
it's not.
sorry about that. The cost of it, has the cost been affected while the technology has gone more advanced? Of course, has the
So,
cost improved?
yeah, so the cost has kind of, I mean, I would say the cost of overall everything has increased, not just
Yeah,
the implants and other things. So
isn't that
if
true?
you
Yeah.
look at the real estate and everything and the inflation, everything seems to have skyrocketed a bit. But the key here is this. Most companies, and even in the US, don't pay for robotics, don't pay for the robotic software. So the robotic software is largely the surgeons or the institutes which want to give a better quality of care, invest in that, take that cost onto themselves. And then, their idea is that, okay, if a center is doing robotic surgery, you'd probably have a larger volume of cases there, right? So that would actually offset the cost of having bought the robot. So basically, that's where the robotic technology. At some point, the insurance companies might start paying for the robot, because then now they are, giving you a lesser chance of, revision surgeries or something like that. So till that data comes out and tells you that yes, this is significantly better, I think insurance companies sometimes kind of stay away from that. But overall, I would say this, that cost, yes, is a concern with any hip and knee replacement surgery, but also you want to focus on the longevity of that procedure. So you don't mind for paying something for which is a little more expensive, but will last you a much longer time and is done properly, so that you don't have to have years with disability and all that, and then you have lesser chance of you having any complications or loosenings or other things. So it's a part of a trade-off, I would say. But at the same time, I think depending on each area and region, there is a geographical pricing that most companies pay, because the same implant in the US would cost you a lot more than the same implant being done in Belize or in Caribbean or in India. I've seen the pricing difference quite a bit as well. But there is that huge geographical pricing part of it as well, because it has to be priced appropriate to that particular region, based on the manpower and other things that are required to manage that implant in that region versus managing that in a more expensive country.
I imagine the volume also of
Yeah, the volume of cases as well.
yeah, yeah.
So in India, I've had implants that the same implant in the US is, if it's marketed at $3,000 or $4,000, in India we were getting it for $800 or $1,000. And
Somebody, yeah. One of our viewers was asking what your impression was of the healthcare in Cuba, and speaking of that, are you
yeah,
familiar with what's happening
I,
there? And
I'm not very familiar with Cuban healthcare system directly. I haven't really visited Cuba, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that. But what I have heard is that the Cuban health system is very good. There were a lot of Cuban trained doctors who I've come across in the Caribbean, and their quality is very good. The thing is that in Cuba, I don't know how the system works though, like in terms of whether it's like it. I would think it's a socialist system, and the healthcare is free compared to like how it's in, say, Canada or UK. Um, uh, but and they do surgeries like complex surgeries, joint replacements, and other things as well. But I don't have any personal experience with Cuba directly, so I would not be able to comment on that.
are we seeing a larger volume of patients that require this procedure? This are we seeing an increase? And I think you might have been touching on that a while. That
Yeah.
are we seeing? And is there a reason for that, Doc? Is
Yeah.
that yeah,
So one of the reasons, like I said, is you're seeing a population that's aging. And as the population ages, you are going to see more degenerative joint diseases, shoulder arthritis, ankle arthritis, hip and knee arthritis. Weight bearing joints like the hip, knee, and ankle tend to wear out a lot more than the upper limb joints. Then, as I said, in countries like where sickle cell burden is more, you would see more issues with the hips and also rheumatoid arthritis and SLE. So when you look at all those things, there is a more, I would say, there is more awareness, more diagnosis of these things. The aging population is definitely increasing the joint arthritis burden. But also remember, it's not just an aging population; it's a healthy aging population. Like you have some of my 80-year-old patients are very fit, go for walks, do a lot of things, play pickleball. So you wouldn't imagine that age is just a number, and it's a chronological thing. Sometimes you can have a 50-year-old with diabetes, kidney disease, and other things who is then on the other hand you would have an 80-year-old who literally doesn't have any other problems at all. So it's very relative, to be honest. But yeah, we are seeing, and what I'm also seeing is that you have a population now that doesn't want to compromise on their quality of life. So I have patients sometimes from who will say, who are like, yes, I'm 50, or they're younger, but they have had, say, an ACL injury or meniscus injuries, and over time their knees have worn out quite a bit, and at 50 they're already struggling, and they're not able to walk, they're not able to have a good quality of life. I can't tell that person, wait till you're 65, 70, and then I'll do your knee replacement. He would not have a good quality of life for those 15 years. He'd rather have a joint replacement and have a better quality of life now than when he's socially, economically more productive, than when he's much older. So a lot of people now are looking at this as an option, because joint replacements really have changed the quality of life and have improved quality of life for a large percentage of the populations. Now, they are not without complications, and they are not without issues, which you know as well, but they do provide a solution to people when they are when they need it. So and with proper awareness, and that's part of the joint registry aim, is to try and reduce those incidents of those complications, so that you can have more reliable results from these surgeries.
Are there specific do's and don'ts once you have these replacements? Should the person continue walking, stop walking, not walk as much, walk more?
So I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I didn't do this surgery for you so that you sit in a chair all the time. I need you to get up. I need you to walk. You're a biomechanical robot at the end of the day. You're a wonderful creation of God. And you have to use your muscles. You have to use your joints, because the more you walk, the more stronger your bones will be. Because those implants we are using, that's why I said uncemented implants. They are load sharing devices. So they put the load through the bone, and the more your bone gets the load, it impregnates with the implant and becomes a part of your body. So you actually get stronger as you put this one, and that pressure and that what you call biomechanical stress is a trigger for your body to add more bone around the area where it's required, to add more bone and collagen tissue along areas of stress. That's why if you are active, you're moving around, you're doing more resistance exercises, there's a huge difference between somebody who's doing resistance exercises and how he ages from 70 to 80 versus somebody who hasn't done too much of resistance exercise, because your muscles, your ligaments, your body kind of regenerates a bit of it as you use it. If you just sit and don't do anything, it doesn't actually help. So high intensity interval training is one of the things that has been known to help. Even it is considered as one of the factors that helps reduce your epigenome changes, and actually almost is considered something that could help prevent aging.
You mentioned osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Could you explain to us the difference, and have they identified a cause, and is there anything hereditary about it, where if you have it with your
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
you're likely to have it?
So osteoarthritis is basically when you have cartilage wear. Yeah, osteoarthritis is where you have cartilage wear more because of biomechanical wear, because of use, because of say you had you're running all the time, you do a lot of marathons, and this one you're likely to have some knee issues, or you might wear out your cartilage in your knees a lot more. Somebody who had a hip fracture might wear out his hip cartilage much sooner. So basically, there is biomechanical wear because of something mechanical that's causing the wear, and including aging. Now that is osteoarthritis. Whereas if you and sometimes that can be post-traumatic. So a trauma around the joint, a fracture around the joint can change the anatomy of the joint and lead to more arthritis in that particular joint only. That is osteoarthritis. But rheumatoid arthritis is a subset of autoimmune diseases. What an autoimmune disease is, basically your body is producing antibodies that are going and attacking your joint cells. So sometimes you would have, like commonly we say that some bacterial coats, the antigens, some bacteria that infect you, you could develop antibodies against those bacterial cell coats. Those resemble the cell coats of your joint of cartilage, and then it produces antibodies that go and attack the joint cartilage and cause destruction of that cartilage. So rheumatoid arthritis is an inflammatory process. It's an inflammation. It's your immune system reacting against your joints, causing inflammation, causing pain, causing this one. So it's a completely different subset of cases. And the treatment for that involves not just treating the joint, but also treating the inflammation by using disease modifying drugs and immunomodulators and other things as well. So that's the major difference between, say, a rheumatoid arthritis and an osteoarthritis. The other question you asked was,
is it a hereditary?
is there any cause or hereditary?
Yeah.
So one of the things that has been debated in recent circles is that biomechanically some of us may be having cartilage or collagen tissue makeup that probably predisposes us to develop earlier knee osteoarthritis or earlier hip osteoarthritis. Sometimes if you have a particular shape of femur we call it an FAI or a femoroacetabular impingement. So if you have a particular shape of hip, you are more likely to develop arthritis and wear out your hip than somebody who doesn't have an FAI type morphology. So it can be to certain extent hereditary if you have a certain type of
physical
anatomy.
makeup.
And that biomechanically, that's still being researched, that biomechanically some of us get bald early. Some develop, my father has not lost any of his teeth and has not had a single cavity all his life. I've inherited his genes, but my sister has not. So she went on my mother's side of the family. So she's got cavities and all that. So it all depends on some, to certain extent, on genetics as well. Of how long your cartilage might last versus not. The other thing, which is rheumatoid arthritis, we still don't know what really the cause is. We know it's not hereditary, but there might be some chromosomal mutations, but mostly it has been thought to be an issue with the immune system rather than, and then more to do with your environmental factors that might affect and predispose you to develop rheumatoid arthritis.
I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 15. When I moved to the States and came back, but I spent a vicious winter over there. I don't know if that helped it along, and did that lead to the osteo? Because I played a lot of basketball in my youth on the cement streets of New York. So would that maybe have contributed to the osteo, and was the osteo as a result maybe a branch off from the rheumatoid? Are they affected?
It could be multifactorial. Like you said, you've played games, you've this one, plus you've had rheumatoid arthritis as well. So you developed some cartilage damage from the rheumatoid, and then when you played, it might have made it worse. So generally, it's a bit of a multifactorial origin, we would say, and there might be multiple things and sometimes it's good to understand these things early on so that you could take corrective steps and maybe avoid certain types of sports or certain types of this one early on to prevent further degeneration. I always say in medicine, 1 + 1 is never 2. It's not. There's so many permutations and combinations of things that can affect, and you can never be dogmatic and say, oh, this is what is going to happen.
Yeah. No, one of our viewers wants to know if is there a risk for rejection of the prosthesis, and how can one
Yeah.
minimize
Yeah.
those risks?
So the rejection of prosthesis, what generally most people refer to is usually if there is an associated infection. So if you can control infection rates with better OR systems, laminar airflow systems, and other things, like again, that comes to the fact that, okay, do they add to the cost? Yes, they do add to the cost, but having a laminar airflow system means you'll have less infections. That means you'll have more successful surgeries, and if you have more successful surgeries, they won't come for revisions, and you generally end up having a better, you save overall in the long term. But using laminar airflow systems, using proper protocols, doing dental checkups before your surgeries to make sure you don't have any active infection going on in your teeth, because one of the reasons why infections happen is because the bacteria from your mouth goes through the bloodstream and goes directly to your prosthetic valve in the heart or prosthetic joint, because from here the blood vessels, they kind of drain directly into the central circulation, causing a hematogenous spread of infections. So that is generally what is the reason for the rejection of prosthesis. The true rejection of prosthesis, which is mostly an allergy to the metal, that is much more rare. And I've seen it a few times in my lifetime, and I've had to do a revision surgery for that. But in those cases, we can opt for other things, like we use sometimes called so typically cobalt chrome is what is used, but or titanium and aluminum vanadium alloy is what is used. But now we have options of zirconium or oxenium, we call it oxidized zirconium, and those can be an alternative to people who have allergy to metals. So if you do have a metal allergy, then it might be worthwhile telling your surgeon, because then he could decide on an implant that has a lesser chance of you having, avoiding the metal and trying something else.
Interesting. I guess that answers the question also about what are the risks now of whether maybe rejecting a prosthesis like
Yeah.
that. One of the viewers wants to know if you know of any organizations that offer financial assistance in cases where money it makes these surgeries prohibitive. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, I would be interested in something like that, but
Yeah.
are there?
Unfortunately, I don't know any organizations that actually do this, but there are organizations that help overall, not just specifically for osteoarthritis as such, but generally overall for some particular
Medical
project.
problem.
So,
Yeah.
but again, I don't know anyone directly that does, and sometimes Samaritan's Purse and some other organizations do help out with some cases.
We see Elon Musk working on his robots and apparently turning out and giving a timeline where they're going to have them rolling off the assembly line, if you will. Are we going to see maybe, and this might almost be that where we are already, where it's half man, half robot, where they're using the part of the human that's still working and put robotics on the other section. Is that basically what we have now with the joint and hip replacements?
So yes, we still not been able to take the surgeon out of the system, which is kind of good news for people like me. but
Well,
but but yeah, the robots are coming in a big way now. Slowly, the AI and other things. There's so much happening in that field that yes, there is given a certain amount of conditions that are satisfied, the robot actually tells me, like for example, when I use a robot for a knee replacement, it actually, I can map the joint, and I can once I map the joint, basically I trace the knee. Once I have done the initial incision, I'll trace your knee like a stencil. And it creates a 3D model of your knee in the system, right? So when that happens, it tells me, oh, you need to cut this much on this side, you need to do this on this side, like you need to release this ligament here. But it'll tell me a plan, and it'll tell me this is what I think you should do. But then I can change it and say, I agree, but I think there is some issue here where I see a little more rotation. I'm going to tweak this side and other things. So I can actually still do all those tweaking and then it'll tell me, okay, if you're doing this is what it's going to look like afterwards. So if there's about a 15-minute period where I'm talking to the computer and the computer's talking to me, and I'm kind of having a conversation with it, like I'm having a conversation with my girlfriend to understand if we are both on the same page.
Yeah.
So ultimately, when we lock it and say, okay, fine, yeah, now we'll go ahead with this plan, then you can take the robot, the haptic robot, which is in your hand, and you take it close to the bone. It will go and based on the surgical plan, it will remove whatever is required. It won't remove a millimeter more than what is needed in that area. So, so that's how it works right now. But in some other surgeries, in some other surgeries like the GI surgeries, the surgeon can actually come out once he has put the ports and everything, and he has put the ports in place. He can actually come out and then do the surgery in a virtual space outside of the surgical area, and he'll be moving the robotic arms with his fingers. So that has happened in GI surgery, that you've been able to take the surgeon out, and the surgeon can sit in another room and do it.
He has to be controlling and supervising it.
Yeah, but in orthopedics that has not happened yet. In orthopedics, we have to be very much there in the field.
Somebody wants to know if does the weight bearing affect the performance of the prosthesis, and I imagine how long it lasts, no?
So with the advances in prosthetic designs with high molecular weight polyethylene plastics and with the oxenium and ceramic implants that are coming in, they are much more conducive to weight bearing. They actually help you to this one. So obesity is no longer so much of a concern. It's a relative contraindication for a joint replacement rather than earlier we used to say that if you have a high BMI, you wouldn't go ahead with the surgery, but that's no longer considered such a big factor. But yeah, these prosthetics can bear a lot of weight.
Doctor, let me introduce my good friend Norman Fairweather, who has been sitting there patiently listening to this. He's a gentleman. Norman, do you have any? Your mic is muted, though, by the way. Do you have you had any joint problems? And he's about
no joint problems yet.
You're one of the lucky ones that has gotten that has aged, and I mean, what accounts for it, Doc? Is it just physical makeup? Is it the genes? What makes one person?
I would say the genes, because in my family they live very long, and people stay fit and a lot of walking.
Yeah.
My father was in volunteer guard, and I actually attended camps with him, but I didn't do half the exercise that they did.
Yeah. Did you want to did you have any questions that you wanted to?
No, I was enlightened. I want to thank the doctor for. I have friends with the problem. I have a friend doing here in New York doing a hip replacement right now, and so I've learned a lot from your conversation, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, the hip replacements were they were called the surgery of the last century, because no other surgery has single-handedly improved the quality of life of humans as much as a hip replacement did for a lot of people.
And help people to remain active and
remain active in this one.
Yeah. That the producer is putting up my X-ray that I also shared with you. Can you just tell us briefly what is going on here and
so
what?
Yeah. So Mike, what's happened is you had what we call as a cemented hip. So if you see the white structure, and you see the cup is kind of translucent, right? Because the cup is plastic. and it has a thin metal rim at the edge, so you're seeing that little oval space called the metal rim, and then you have that whitish edge all around the back of it, and you're seeing some whitish specks here and there. So those are all cement. So basically, at earlier, what we used to do was, when we did the hips, we used to use polymethyl methacrylate, which is a cement, bone cement, to bind the plastic or the implant to the bone. And you also had the same thing on the femur side as well, where the cement was put in, and then you see the prosthesis actually sits in the cement. Now, the problem with that is that it's great for initial fixation. The cement goes, it's like a grout or a lute. It actually goes into the pores of your bone, the trabeculae holds on there, and it goes into the pores and the crevices of the implant and holds on to the implant. Now, that's good for the time being, but as time goes on, there's micro movements between the cement and the bone essentially is not able to hold on to the cement, and it loosens out. And we call it aseptic loosening. And also, why the aseptic loosening happens is because the quality of the plastic that was used a few years ago was not nearly the kind of quality of plastic that we have now. So it actually releases microplastics as it articulates, right? So those small particles of plastic, they actually incite a inflammatory reaction in the bone, causing eventually the implant to loosen out from the bone. That's why the cemented implants haven't lasted, the cemented cups haven't lasted as long. Nowadays, what we use is a uncemented cup. So if you put that x-ray up again, and you see what I have done on the other side, you would see that that cup doesn't have any cement. What you're seeing, the white specks over there, is the cement that was too deep in your pelvis. I didn't want to go there because it was right next to blood vessels and your bladder, which if I had gone that deep, it would have caused other problems. But it wasn't really coming in my way, and it was giving me enough purchase on your bone. So what I did was I used a jumbo cup, which is a large cup with a multi-hole cup. So if you see that cup, that implant, that hasn't loosened out at all, and that hasn't loosened because the bone, actually, it has a porous coating, so that the surface of the cup has a coating that actually, it's called a hydroxyapatite or a porous coating, that actually incites your bone and asks your bone to come bind with me, kind of grow into it. So those screws that you're seeing, I just put them there just for the initial fixation because we had lost a lot of bone. You had a very similar, what you're seeing on this side where your cemented cup is loose and almost inside the pelvis, you had a very similar situation on this side as well. So I had to fish that cup out from inside, and after that I used this uncemented cup. So the uncemented cup works a lot better than the cemented cup. So because the bone now has a chance to grow into it and has held on, and then that implant has become like a part of your body. When I did the revision hip, I had to revise the femoral side also. That's why you're seeing those cables. That's why you're seeing that long stem that has gone inside there, because the stem again takes so I had, because you had already had so much loosening, you had lost a lot of the fixation on the top. So I had to take fixation from further down in your medullary canal of your shaft to build it up from there. So that's what we did on one side. The other side requires something very similar, but it has a bit more bone loss over the years. So you will need maybe bone grafting as well to build up the bone stock there.
Doc, I see the prosthesis look different. Like your one has more of an angle on it. This one also, the cup looks bigger than the ball that's in it.
Yeah.
Is there a problem there also, you think?
So what you're not able to see is the plastic. The plastic is invisible on an X-ray. So it isn't that big. It has a smaller.
Okay.
It has a smaller inner diameter, and it has a larger outer diameter.
Yeah.
So what you're not seeing is, because it's a plastic, you're not able to see the whole structure.
Will they be able to use that cup again, or will
No,
they
no,
just
no.
have to take that out?
You cannot. You have to take that out, and you have to do a fresh one. In that side, you might have to use what we call as a cage, which kind of helps you to put screws above and below, and it gives like a metal cage with then bone graft underneath it, so that it helps to build the bone. So we put the bone graft first, then we put the cage, and then we use a cup into the cage.
Amazing. That is that I can't see you. You're in there doing that. That just for the record, doc, how do you stop the bleeding? Because one doctor in Belize was telling me this is going to be a lot of bleeding.
Yeah.
And so, but what do you do?
So
Lock off
we
the veins? And
Yeah, no, what we do is there will be some bone bleeding. Surprisingly, it won't be that much. We've been doing it over the years, so we do have sophisticated cautery and radio frequency systems that actually help us to control the bleeding in the surgical field. But also we use something called tranexamic acid, which is like an injection that we give you before we start the surgery, and that helps to reduce the amount of bleeding from the bone. I also do something called soak sponges with tranexamic acid. If I find that it's bleeding too much, I'll soak the sponges and keep it in there and hold there for few minutes, and that helps to stop the bleeding as well. So with all those methods, we generally tend to control the bleeding quite well.
Doc, you've worked for years at the Hill City Hospital, and I know that you went into the government service for a while. Our hospital in Belize have gotten a lot of complaints, and how is the general health hospital in Cayman? Are they up to par with the private institutions?
Yes, they are. So they do have the equipments and the implants and the things. So the government hospital in Cayman has much more resources at its disposal than some of the other countries, I would say. Maybe because Cayman is a little more well-off country as well, right? So it does have it has quite a good infrastructure and options and places, this one, but they do have a lot of load of obstetrics and gynecology and everything else also, but they do have they're quite I would say it's a very competent place, where they do quite a bit of advanced work as well.
Did that factor into your decision to locate in Cayman? Or did you look at the map and say, well, you know what, I think I'll go here? How
Yeah.
how did you make that decision that
No,
way?
I mean, with Cayman, I actually didn't have a long-term plan. I just came here for 2 years, thinking I'll work for 2 years and then I'll go back to India, and I had the blueprints for my hospital ready in India, but it ended up falling in love with the Caribbean.
Wonderful.
One of the things that motivated me to stay in the Caribbean is because when I looked at this part of the world, I realized that it was much underserved in my field, at least. When it came to orthopedics and advanced surgeries, people in Cayman would still fly out to US for their surgeries, and so do a lot of people whoever can afford it from the Caribbean. Everybody goes to the US and has their surgeries, right? So that paradigm shift in them now shifting to and having that kind of quality of care available in house and in the Caribbean, it's still a dream for quite a few of the Caribbean islands as well. So I felt that if I went back to India, and I was already on a upslope in my career, I would have been a successful orthopedic surgeon, and I would have had a big name and everything, no doubt. But I would be one among the many orthopedic surgeons, and I wouldn't have really made a significant contribution to the healthcare healthcare landscape in India. But staying in the Caribbean, I felt I could contribute a lot more to the healthcare landscape, not just for Cayman, but for other islands like the Eastern Caribbean, the Bahamas, the other places where advanced care like this, the kind of care that I provide in terms of advanced sports surgeries, joint replacements, and revision hips and knees, that I wouldn't. I think I felt my skills would be better utilized in an area of need rather than in an area that's already surplus.
But that's rare. That's unusual because I don't know that we're finding this in physicians nowadays. It seems like they would be more concerned, or can I make a good living here? Going back to India, certainly you would make a living and you could be there, but it's so unselfish of you, and we applaud that, and I thank you for it, because we need more doctors. I visited doctors here, and I get there. I kind of like a lackadaisical or just dismissive kind of way, and not even sitting and listening to the concerns. They're just writing, and you know what? I'll come back next week and whatnot. I hear from you a genuine concern that is comforted. I hope that is not as rare as I'm thinking it is, or have experienced it.
No, I think, Mike, there are other surgeons who are as passionate about it as me. And I think it's just that when you look at the landscape and you look at the various things, you have good politicians, you have bad politicians, right? So you have good surgeons, you have bad surgeons, you have good human beings, you have others who would take advantage. So at the end of the day, I think the Lord uses all of them to do His work. So yeah, I say the Lord has a way to even use the devil to do His good
I
work.
yeah, that I, I don't think you'll get a lot of argument from that. There, there are the devils that might agree with you, Doc.
No,
But
he might not want to do it. He might just
yeah,
inadvertently
yeah,
do it.
yeah. I might do it, but I don't know if he's doing it. He might think he's doing it for one reason and
Yeah,
not
and then it turns
realizing
out
that
to be something
he's so.
completely different,
Yeah,
right? So
Doc.
it's
Yeah, yeah. We've done an hour and it's gone quickly. I don't want to hold you up too much longer. Or how are you with time? What
uh,
what. What's the schedule like, and how long did you allot for us? Or would you um
yeah, I'm fine, Mike, but I know you have other guests on the show as well, so I don't want to hold you up if you're this one. But yeah, I love the conversation, and
and
thank you so
trust me,
much.
these guests are as enlightened as I am. And that's the word. Doc, thank you so very much. I hope that some other point we might you once I get back on this schedule again. I'd really like for us to chat some more
Sure.
and discuss it. Is there anything we did not cover that you think we 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 would do well in knowing?
Yeah. No, I think it's. I just want to tell you, orthopedics is a huge subject. So it's a kind of a whole branch of medicine within medicine itself. So yeah, if there are any specific issues that you want to touch upon, I'm happy to come back anytime and
Yeah,
speak about those specific things, because today we spoke more about in general about this one. But if there are any other topics that you would like to discuss, I would always be
wonderful.
happy
And
to come.
somebody just said that it's rare that the doctor will speak, to take the time to just speak
Yeah.
and explain things to us, no?
Mhm.
And especially a procedure like that. Doctor, I
Yeah.
am in your debt, and
Thank
very,
you.
very grateful to you, sir. On behalf of all the people who are listening and enjoying this tonight, sir, God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you,
hope
Mike.
hope
Thank
we'll
you
see you in
for.
Belize soon. Please
Yeah,
come to Belize.
yeah, I wish to come to Belize one of these days, and I have quite a few friends who are Belizean friends here in Cayman, and I'm actually reaching out to some of them for you as well. So I
Mhm.
hope everything goes well for you, Mike. And
Thank you, doctor. Have a nice evening. Much love. Much thanks. Yeah.
Much
All right,
respect to the doctor, man.
man.
Unusual man. Much
Isn't he cool?
respect.
Why he's a humble fellow, and
So,
he did my procedure on my hip where I had I had a hip done in Belize. Then I was advised by Dr. Smith actually that, you know what, we don't have the type of prosthesis, and he foresaw this what was happening here with this one, because as the doctor says, it's a cemented one. Um, then he said, well, go to Merida, and I went to Merida for the next hip. I was able to get that done, but when I came back to Belize and he looked at the X-rays and he said, well, you know what, but this is the same thing we use in here. So they obviously steered you while I went there for something better. It was, and I'm hoping that is not the case now, because I'm getting ready to go to Mexico to get the procedure for that done. I am comforted in knowing that that is possible, that it can be done. You see, but he's a gentleman that's man humble with all his expertise and his intelligence and whatnot. Very humble and giving guy. You know, so he's I but Naman, good evening, welcome, sir.
Good evening, sir. That you have to be commended to bring a program like this. That was really fantastic.
I think it was informative, and the fact is that he's telling us that more people are now needing the procedure.
Yeah.
And what he was telling me is that what they tend to concentrate on trauma. Because there's a lot of trauma, you got a gunshot wound, you got a heart attack, you got cancer, and they don't look at the bone disease as such, or the joints and the knees as being so. They know it causes a lot of pain, but they figure, well, all right, this might not kill you. If we have to concentrate on something that will kill you, when most of the time it does anyway. He was suggesting that what it does is keep people out of work, which does affect the economy and affect production, no? From people in their daily lives. Very, very, very interesting, and I keep hoping it wasn't me having to deal with this, but I would hope it was nobody that had to go through it. Unfortunately, it was me, and I'm blessed to have been able to get the kind of attention and medical attention has kept me in the game still. I am hoping that I still have a little bit to contribute, no, to be the life. So
you know, in the States, these doctors um, find themselves so heavily indebted when they graduate from medical school. They just have to go after making the money.
They have no
because
choice.
then the debt that they incur, and then the liability insurance that they have to carry, make them not like your doctor. Not the, you know.
But and there's so much more we could cover with the doctor. I really don't want to hang him on for too long, because he works all day, and he has a load. You know, so
sure.
he's in Cayman, but I think we'll see him in Belize, because he loves Belize, and he loves the Belizeans. The Belizeans over there, he hangs with them a lot and whatnot. So there are quite a number of Belizeans over there, you know, Norman.
Yes, I know. There's a whole
have you been to Cayman?
No, I haven't been to the Cayman.
Yeah, it's so a lot like Belize. And in fact, it's a little like maybe San Pedro or Kikaka, because it's relatively small. And I imagine also the fact that it is still a British colony, you know. It's not an independent country, and they seem to like it that way. But there's it is a good standard of living. The money is even stronger than the U.S. currency. So I was really surprised when I found that out. I went pull out my 100 US and think I got money. I mean, when I give me change, we need to adapt that, Dr. Almeida, for real. When I get me change, and he said, no, something wrong. Yeah, man, where would you going? He said, no, this, no, bring that down. Yeah. And, but yeah, man.
Wow.
So, but no, condolences to the and Neil. Eric Neil. Well, did you ever interact with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he taught for years. I believe it was Saint Ignatius, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
And I always remember him behind the plate playing baseball. He was a
Oh yeah.
catcher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And amazing because you remember Belize had a thriving baseball industry, Norman,
Mm-hmm.
with teams like
Mm-hmm.
Jungle Honey.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Willie Wiley had a team in there,
Yeah.
but and that just went even baseball is on life support.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and the whole sport because we had a vibrant basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if going to semi-pro helped or made it worse because it seems like when you put money in there at the amateur level we weren't doing bad, but at some point I imagine they have to make back a little something
Mm-hmm.
to pay the bills, no?
Yeah.
But you ever play any sport in your time?
Me, I played in Belize for youth hostel.
Uh, Tell me you
For
mean Ina
for
Utas. That tell me you mean Ina Utas there.
Actually,
Because
I'm gonna work the Royal Bank when I'm gonna
oh,
play for
oh,
youth hostel.
yeah, yeah.
And the
Uh,
team included Bernard Lightburn and um,
okay.
Pomo.
Okay,
Pomo
Bernard,
on that
Bernard
team.
still run boat. Yeah, but I see him on Facebook. Yeah,
Yeah, I hear from him every once in a
but yeah,
while.
man, the whole sport industry in Belize. I don't. I see they still trying to keep a little basketball game going here and there, a little league, no. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I love basketball. I played basketball for Kingston College when I went to school in Jamaica.
okay.
And it was easy there because nobody played basketball. Only the Chinese and all the
you,
short people were playing.
big fish
So
in a
we
small
so,
pond. Yeah.
so we end up being champions. But I
Okay.
played basketball in Orange Walk when Royal Bank sent me there. I played for Briseño for Guinness.
All right.
Yeah.
I see Jeremy popped up on the screen. How are you, my brother? Greetings. Now your mic must be mute. The mic must be mute there.
It took me a while to log in, but I'm here. I'm glad to be here. Good to see you again.
All right, man. All is well.
All is well, thank you.
Wonderful. You know Norman?
I've not met him personally, but I've heard of great things about him a number of times. I taught his daughter, I think Imani, in high school here at the comprehensive school.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And
Small world.
Very small world.
yes, indeed. All right. Now I see I have to try figure out who else did join. Jerome. Hi, Jerome. Greetings, my brother. You look young, man. From the last time I see you, only me to get old. Everybody put now, man.
I'm trying to be here, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Gotta
yeah,
keep
guys.
it.
Wonderful. Did you or were you privy to the conversation with the doctor? Did you?
I listened to a part of it, and I also listened to the ending of the discussion you guys had on, doctors and the amount of money it takes to go through medical school.
Right.
There's another part of this as well too, in that recruiting doctors to be in sort of rural areas has been difficult. So
Right.
they don't want to really, and they've been trying to get like immigrant doctors, right, from India and so on to go to rural areas where the population is like 10,000 or 20,000. But a lot of American doctors don't want to go in certain areas, and then I think specialization in certain areas, because of they have to spend so much money on becoming,
Right.
a doctor. Some people want to specialize in certain field where they could earn a lot more money.
Yeah.
So
And then big pharma, because when you talk about the stuff you have to use
Healthcare.
and the medication and whatnot, by the time you're done with that, boy, you're selling the house, no?
Mm.
It's unfortunate, guys. Really, but again, to what the doctor was saying is that's why it's necessary for the Cayman, I mean, for the Caribbean and the whole of CARICOM, which would include Belize, to come together and be a block, as opposed to individual parts, small nations, small countries that aren't able to afford the care that's necessary, or even have a voice loud enough to make a difference. No, so we have to look at that. Um, Gentlemen, is there a ceasefire in Gaza? I've been hearing talk of a ceasefire in Gaza. Is there a ceasefire in Gaza?
There certainly is a ceasefire in Gaza. Hopefully holds up, and there's the exchange in terms of prisoners and hostages.
I understand something that I'm seeing some of that is going on. Of course, mainstream media is not giving much of it. But I found that from the very beginning here in this situation that you really have to go offline. You can't listen to the CNNs and the MSNBC and the Fox. You seriously have to go to like YouTube and some of those. I like Pierre Morgan actually. He while he has a definite bias, he brings on guests with different points of view, and you know, you could weed through the whole thing and get a better idea what's going on. What did you see? Why you put up something there on the screen a minute ago, and I didn't get that. All right, okay. It's had something to do with Cuba, though. This is saying that we'll be talking. You're talking about some heavyweights there. All right. Jeremy, didn't Cuba sponsor medical school for a few of our Garinagu communities, specifically Honduras? Do you know about that, Jeremy?
Yeah, yes, there were some medical students sponsored by the government of Cuba for Belizeans, but also some Garifuna doctors from southern Belize benefited from that to study medicine in the Republic of Cuba. There were also some from Honduras, yes. And I would say if it was not for the government of Cuba, then these opportunities would not have existed or open up on other indigenous people in Belize and in Honduras and other parts of Central America, Latin America.
I saw something on the news about, I don't think it was the blockade discontinued for Cuba, but there was something about Cuba. Jerome, did you see that?
I don't know. I might have. I see. I don't know if I saw the news on Biden changing the policy, but even if that is the case, we'll have Marco Rubio as the
Secretary of State.
Yeah, Secretary of State, and I think that there's going to be a sort of a regression going back to the policy that perhaps not even the Bush administration had towards Cuba.
Let's talk.
What I heard new with Cuba is Cuba has now joined a partner of BRICS.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know what?
That will be interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting because I'm wondering if the U.S. isn't driving some of these countries into an alliance of resistance, if you will, or survival.
They said, I think they are.
And when we see Iran and Russia making gestures towards each other, and it has the makings of a world war. Are we going to be okay under Trump? You think?
Who believes?
Well, the world. The world, because we have global village now, right?
We are, but you know, as a Belizean, I look and I see the future coming towards us. Belize in terms of
coming towards us could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could be a steam truck,
it will be migration.
Yeah,
we'll end up with a lot of immigrants coming in, and we have an opportunity to be trilingual, not only bilingual. We have an opportunity to really build a strong, unified Belize.
What would be that third? What would be that third language?
Garifuna.
Okay.
Garifuna. We have to be able to speak that too.
So you think we're gonna get more Garifuna immigrants, and where would they be coming from?
Guatemala and Honduras.
Honduras and Guatemala, I would think.
Yeah.
But why? Why? I mean, there's lots of room in Guatemala. Guatemala
No,
also,
it's. I think it's governance.
but don't I? And they seem to have a more progressive. Did you hear the speech from the Guatemalan president at the UN, the last one he gave? I,
Yes,
I
I
mean,
heard that.
I was impressed. I'm. It seemed to me it was extending an olive branch almost.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When you look at what happening to the people in Pitén, I don't know much about Olive Branch and how they treat people there and how they're treating us along the river.
But there is also a lot of oppressive conditions that Garifuna live under in Honduras, and so many of them escape Honduras to seek better opportunities in the United States, even if they're there without all the legal documentation. So if they're to be deported, I do not think that they want to go back to those conditions where their lives are threatened and there are still land rights issues for them to resolve. And those who emerge in the leadership of those kinds of struggles, their lives are at risk. So perhaps there would be that option for them to consider returning to a third country, which might include Belize.
You
Yeah,
guys think?
I think that's a real threat we face in that the deportations that will take place, how many will end up in Belize?
You think?
You know,
You
much
think
like
he's
the
serious?
much.
You really think Trump is serious about going through with that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
But
We're
can he?
facing a very racist and vicious set of life in America.
Uh, but you know, America is a democracy. By on the books anyway. Trump is not a dictator, although he'd want to be. I don't know that the American people is going to let him be a dictator as such.
But
Yeah, Joe.
yeah, there is a recent poll. I was just listening to NPR just a while ago, and they said that, and I was surprised by this, that 49% of Americans supported deportation for undocumented immigrants.
Undocumented. Okay.
There's also the case, I think what is going to essentially happen is it's kind of going to be a botched effort in the sense that he will, in order to sort of fulfill this, the promise that he made to his supporters, he'll attempt, just as he did with the Muslim ban. He'll try to start the deportation process. But I think a certain reality is going to set in, right? I mean, there are a lot of people on the left there and people pro-immigrant groups are already gearing up legally to challenge a lot of these deportations, right? And then there's the other part of it where, in terms of the aspect of where you're going to house so many thousand people, in order to deport them, and will these countries accept them? Then I think the deportation thing is also related to foreign policy, and that we've discussed earlier, in the sense that a lot of these countries are going to just band together, and they will, in their opposition to this mass deportation, and it will bring a lot of anti-American feelings. And the president of Mexico, president of Honduras, and these other places will sort of it will have a significant influence on American foreign policy as well, domestic policy.
More than that too, Americans are spoiled. They're not going to do the kind of hard work that immigrants are doing, and certainly not for the wages that they're doing it. Americans are to talk about $25 an hour minimum wage. How are they going to do that? And if the Americans get that, the immigrants can work for what they could get, no? And so
certainly we're going to probably see it when the cleanup effort starts in Altadena for the fires, cleaning up the debris from all the buildings.
Indeed.
And not to put it this way, but Jose is going to be expected to do the sort of the cleanup.
Right. Jose, can you see?
Yeah, he's going to be expected to be up there in Pacific Palisades doing the work as well. Yeah. And as they go further into the construction work and so on, whether it's all the way high tech or just what do they call it? Not plastering. I forgot. Drywall and so on, plumbing.
Yeah.
Immigrant labor is going to be needed in order to for the rebuilding of these parts of California. So I always believe that this deportation effort will be sort of, they'll make an effort. Certainly, I think Stephen Miller is this little bull that the young guy in his administration. He's going to make an effort to sort of implement this mass deportation plan, but I think it will be difficult to carry out, and it will also have a ripple effect. It will affect other sort of policies he might try to carry out, and so on.
Is
But
he gonna is he gonna restart the wall? Will he restart the building of the wall? Which seemed like a dumb plan to start with.
No, I think they will be strategic about who they deport and where they take action and what industries get. You'll have immigrants working in those chicken slaughterhouses. You'll have them picking lettuce, and they'll be fine.
But the lawyers
They'll
might be
exploit
deported.
them. They get exploited with the okay of the government of the United States, and it will be the Garifuna in the Bronx that is there illegally that will get deported. And the Belizeans,
I don't like how to pick by the Garifuna though.
No. I'm just. We brought it up earlier. Yeah. I think they'll be very strategic about how they go about this.
Yeah, I think in addition to them going about being strategic about this, one of the things we also have to say about immigrants, and I remember the former Belizean ambassador to the U.S. once said that Belizeans were sort of good at not getting deported, and that there was a certain amount of sophistication. Well, I don't know about the new people that recently applied for asylum or whatever. But in the past, Belizeans were savvy in terms of understanding American culture, understanding a lot about American culture, and not being deported. So I think certain groups are going to be a lot more vulnerable than other groups. And I do think that Belizeans will be, and maybe this is hopeful on my part, they'll be a little bit less vulnerable than, say, Hondurans or Guatemalans. Or
we hide better than everybody else. We hide better than have to run we down.
We have cultural capital too. I mean, we a lot of us understand the culture. So I think if at any point where there's significant numbers of Belizeans are being sent back, then it's really serious, because
you have to factor in the bad mind too. Because those of us who will report some other ones. The whole.
I think those days are.
Yeah, I agree with Jerome, but I think those days are gone.
So? Boy,
people drop a dime on you and that.
But wasn't that some? That was some fun times, boy. I can remember the days, and I'm this old, going into a basement and somebody holla immigration, and man head for window, boy. I mean,
yeah. My father once put a sort of a spin on this, and he said that immigration somewhere, I don't know, Bronx or Brooklyn, they had a party in the basement, and one guy was straight, and he came to answer the door, and he said, "Oh no, boy," he said, "the immigration they are, you say on a better left, right?" And the immigration guy looks at him puzzled. He's like, "Yeah, what is he saying?" I said, "I tell him the boy, I gotta leave right now because the man they are, right?"
Yeah.
And so that interaction, they didn't understand what he was.
So man started bail out one at a time.
Yeah.
Boy. We've had an interesting time, haven't we?
I want to raise an issue that you brought up earlier, G. Mike, about American democracy, and we tend to think that once the politicians are elected, that people still have the mass power to change a lot of things. But I think we could see American system as more of an oligarchy, and there are big guys, billionaires, especially more so, who are calling the shots. such that even when there is mass protest that might happen,
They could
I
ignore
think
it.
it's harder to break through, and people are less inclined to want to do that. And so, for example, when we saw the outbreak of the war between Israel and Hamas, and there were protests all over, but that did not stop the funding of the war, the continuation of the war, as if the public did not matter. All the protests that they had, even worldwide, did not make much of a difference. So I'm beginning to think that while we can say this is a great democracy, once the elections are over, whatever the president wants with his colleagues who he put in cabinet, and if he has a majority in the Congress, then it makes it more difficult for people to effectively demand change.
And they're saying that many of them are pro-Israel, many pro-Israel people in there.
Yeah, in fact, the U.S. government and the election process is influenced by Israeli dollars.
APAC.
Well, uh,
Yes.
Well, I
So
mean, I think there are two things that are happening. I think, and revealed by the recent U.S. presidential election. One is, I think there are a lot of people in America just think our democracy is on. I guess I should say, or at this point, after living here all these,
see,
we're on automatic pilot. That nothing bad will ever happen, right? Even what could go wrong, right? I mean, certainly we have democracy in terms of the state level, in terms of the municipal level. It's going okay, but we never think that anything can go wrong with our democracy. And I think there will be a point soon where we'll find out, right? In terms of, they were talking about Viktor Orban in Hungary, and how gradually, he became an authoritarian leader, how in terms of the Supreme Court, his appointments of justices and so on, and how Hungarian democracy just simply dissolves over a certain period of time. And I think that we do see in the upcoming Trump administration, people sort of ignored Project 2025. I mean, when they went to the ballot box, that we might pay a price for it. Maybe it's people think, oh, you're too alarmist, right? But I do think that there will be significant change in America, and I think that a lot of people here just think, oh, yeah, nothing bad, because there are corrective measures that can be taken. Nothing bad. But I mean, America has gone through significant periods where progress was made, like during Reconstruction, right? And then during Jim Crow segregation, all the progress where you had black lawmakers and so on were just simply taken away. People might say, oh, that's a long time ago. But I can see many of these things still happening in America.
don't you think though that at this point, America and the many races that have gone to America, and people have gotten, just like Trump is putting his appointments there are many people who have gotten in influential positions in government and in other aspects of the American society, that might in fact be able to hold some of um, these absurd ideas in check. Eh,
well, well, if the
Yeah, but
president,
I think what has happened too is that the Republicans have been good at trying to master local government control. The school boards, at the very basic, they got their people there. That's why they can do things about banning books, and they can do what they've been doing with curriculum in elementary school. The Democrats haven't really done that, and and um, and I think that is where the strength, the foundation, is what it's built on. So now we have at its very foundation some people who are racist and openly racist, who are Archie Bunker. If you all remember when that character came on TV in the United States, and you could say like, how could that even? I remember coming back from Belize after 4 years in Belize and find that Archie Bunker was so popular. and everybody laughing at some of his worst statements. But I think that Mr. Trump has made it so that it's okay to be racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be hateful. It's okay to abuse people. That's manly. That's how men's supposed to be. And I think as long as that is at the root of what we see, that's what we're going to contend with.
But
go ahead, Jeremy.
Norman, after the election, in terms of the analysis of what went wrong, it was split. A lot of the black analysts looked at racism at the core in terms of sort of driving the way in which many whites voted, including white women, voted for Donald Trump. And if you look at a lot of the white analysts, they said, "Oh, it was about inflation and gas and the car price of eggs and so forth." And I still think that a significant number of them still haven't really want to really admit the role that really race played in sort of driving a significant percentage of the white electorate in voting. And it was not the price of eggs, or it wasn't inflation or the price of gas or any of these things. So if a lot of these people are in denial.
But those things actually factored in, don't you think? And how do you explain it? How do you explain the increase in the amount of blacks that voted for him and the Puerto Ricans after all the stuff that was put out there, like they were talking about Puerto Ricans, and remember the joke about the Puerto Ricans where they had so much slack about. How do you explain that?
Yeah, in my own old days when I was in school and you take statistics, right, and you used to have this thing, regression analysis, right, where it's like, okay, this factor explains not 60% of this, and then this factor explains 10% of this and 5% of this. I think his appeal to African Americans and Latinos was a little bit different, right? Than it says the white electorate, right? And going back, we have a lot of Belizeans who supported Trump. They might not even have been necessarily conservative Republican, fiscal conservatives or whatever, but they just like certain things about the Trumpism. They like the posture, the sort of the image that he projects, right? And when
a macho kind of thing.
Yeah, and when there are questions about misogyny and racism and all the disqualifying things about him, there's no explanation on their part. They simply accept him for who he is, and they just overlook everything. And there's some people that are close to us, people that we know. And you're puzzled. It's like, okay, well, how did this happen? He just had a certain appeal,
But I do. What role do you think was played by the fact that Biden's policy were extremely unpopular? That a lot of people would have, because I didn't think that Trump was a good candidate, but I thought he was the better of two evils. Let me put it that way. I thought that I could not see those wars that Trump was engaged in and funding. And I felt that, Biden, no? I felt that Trump coming in, I thought that the Ukraine war would have stopped immediately. And it looks like there's some progress there also. But now, don't you think that with the ceasefire now on, and it seems like and he did make it clear that once he gets in, it is known that he does not like war, and it is not a part of why many people voted for him.
Norman?
I don't know if he doesn't like war. I don't know if that's.
Well, he was in 4 years already, and the previous 4 years there were no wars.
There was COVID.
But he took military actions such as the assassination of I think General Qasem, the Iranian general, on several military actions. I mean, they were specific, and it demonstrates that like I would normally say, I don't know if he doesn't like war. I mean, in terms of the Israel conflict, he made it possible for the Israelis to annex the Golan Heights, right? He made
Jerusalem, the capital, yeah.
yeah, the embassy from in terms of from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So he's taken certain actions that where while he might not like the sort of war, that we he might not be opposed to certain taking certain kinds of belligerent actions around the world.
Yeah.
You know.
Listen,
he has no problem with Russia moving in and taking parts of their neighbor. He have absolutely no problem with that.
But you can't just throw that like that, Norman, because they're not exactly just that. If there was a defensive move, it would have been by Russia and not Israel. Israel was not about no self defense. We know that, but Russia, the NATO was about to put a base in Ukraine. Now we remember what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis in '62 when they were trying. Russia was trying to put a military base on Cuba, which is I mean it wound up with a big whole standoff and Cold War.
It's not only Ukraine that is concerned about Russia's action. It's all of NATO, all the former Soviet Union countries, because he's trying to breathe new life into that.
Who you mean? Who is Putin?
Putin is similar to Mr. Trump as let's be great again. It's the same thing.
But we haven't heard that rhetoric from. Have we? Have we heard that rhetoric from Putin? Really?
Yeah, and the USSR.
And I hear the US saying this. I hear that propaganda coming out of the US. But which of these two nations are trying to create a hegemony here? The US has 80 military bases across the world, all over the place. Russia has how many? So which one is trying to spread out?
There's some consideration to make though as to why this war started. Remember that NATO had promised firmly not to expand towards the border of Russia. That was an established and so when the Soviet Union broke up, US took the opportunity, I would say unnecessarily, to convince NATO to keep expanding. And so Putin drew some lines and they kept crossing that line, and he adjusted and he drew another line. And this time when they got to Ukraine, which is right at the border, he had enough. And so that's kind of the basis of how war started. And then US was also meddling in the politics of Ukraine, being able to influence the leadership that is there. In fact, a leader was overthrown.
Correct, in 2014.
The United States, and put in a leader who was supportive of the US values. And then so all of that played into the foundation of how this war started. So it's basically a US war. It's a US sponsored war.
You've been paying attention.
Well, U.S. imperialism has always been there and will continue to be there.
But you can excuse that and not excuse Russia?
I'm not excusing it at all. But that's the reality. That's the reality.
A reality too, though, is Russia has not placed any base, let's say, in Mexico or Canada or any part of the United States. No. But it is the United States moving out all into those areas.
Basically, the point that I've been making,
in very unnecessary ways, almost like stoking wars and trying.
You know what? Funny too. I remember distinctly when Trump was running against Biden. Trump was asking Zelensky or demanding that Zelensky arrest Biden's son. Remember that? That's a time when nobody. I thought Ukraine was a bad headache. It turned out that was migraine. But it is. Nobody knew about about Ukraine at that time until when Trump was saying, come on, tell Zelensky has to arrest him. He's done something which would have helped Trump in that election. Now, I'm wondering if the whole support of Ukraine is not a quid pro quo.
Remember, Ukraine had nuclear weapons,
and gave it up.
One of the things that Ukraine agreed to was to get rid of its nuclear weapons.
Okay.
And to depend on friendly neighbors.
Okay.
And that didn't work. They saw that wasn't going to work with Russia.
Well, why?
And certainly they're saying like we should not have gotten rid of nuclear weapons to satisfy these idiots.
But no. See, you're exposing a bias right there. Because now, how was Russia was not aggressing Ukraine until Ukraine made plans to put a NATO base in that country.
That's true.
I don't think that's a fair comment, and it's a good talking point from the American standpoint. But I don't think there's a lot of truth to that, Norman.
I think you guys make valid points, but I think it's also important to note, right, that for instance, look at the Baltic states, right, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, where they have large Russian populations, and Russia, Putin has used these populations and the supposed oppression that these ethnic minorities have suffered in these countries as a pretense to say, you know what, has sort of done a lot of saber rattling, say, possibly invading these countries and so forth. That because they're not given full citizenship in these countries. So I think it's not just sort of NATO moving sort of towards Russia. I think it's sort of Putin sort of harboring these notions of sort of the grandness of Russia, recreating that grandness, and he's meddled with his neighbors like Georgia, the state of Georgia, right? Trying to create satellite states around the Russia, right?
Jerome, we hear a lot about that on the mainstream media in America. We hear a lot about that on CNN and MSNBC, but we haven't heard of that in other independent media sources. And so I don't know if that is not just some well-placed propaganda to have people believe that this was the case, when in fact the aggressor was not the one that they're putting the blame on.
No, I mean, this Soviet Union existence is a reality. And after the Soviet Union collapsed, you have all of these movements of states trying to find which side they should be on. Now we're faced with a Soviet Union that wants to recreate a past that they had, which was really running the lives of these other people.
Are you seeing that?
It's no different from the US thinking the Caribbean is their backyard. And that
they think the rest of the world is their backyard. No, man? That one funny thing, because somebody was telling me, and I found it interesting. I really, I don't remember who said, but I haven't forgotten it. They say people were always thinking that the US had the Soviet Union in check and were keeping them in check. But when the Soviet Union dismantled, we find out that maybe it was the other way around, because when the Soviet Union dismantled, they invaded Nicaragua, Honduras, a number of other countries that they just started invading Panama. They took out Noriega. So who was keeping? And in fact, there's a theory that maybe Ukraine engaged Russia in order for them to do what they're doing in Palestine, because then the only place that would have stood up in defense and been able to make a loud enough noise would have been Russia. But with Russia now engaged in such a war with Ukraine, where with the forces that they're getting from the NATO countries, whether under the table or not, and the US in particular, with all the weapons and bombs and whatnot, they will have to worry about now coming out ahead in this war I have here. Me can't deal with you over this side. Let me see what Israel is saying now. Considering the affairs in Palestine, we need to consider all sides. Every country will push propaganda that supports their narrative. The U.S. has been guilty of this numerous times, no doubt. Non-biased media sources are needed. Does non-bias exist? That's a good question.
I would highly recommend one of the most objective thinkers and analysts that I've been following is Jeffrey Sachs. He's an economist. He's worked with the Russian government as an advisor. He's worked with the Chinese government. He's worked with the United Nations. He's worked with the Ukrainian government.
What media does he work with?
He doesn't have a media. He goes on different interviews and podcasts and very sharp analysis. And he's not afraid to criticize his own country for the warmongering that they do and the kind of propaganda that fits in a way to stoke war, to justify their getting into these other countries, in most cases unnecessarily. For example, he also mentioned about a book that was written by Netanyahu in the 1990s, which the US, which has set up, if you read the book, it has set up the propaganda, the justification for wars, and even the plan for wars in Somalia, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Libya, in 7 countries, in Syria. And so even before these countries were invaded or there were wars in these countries, there was a way to prepare for wars in these. It was prepared for long in advance, so that any president of the United States that came in would follow this plan by the deep state, by those who are planning these wars for U.S. interests. And so it unfolded the way it was written by Netanyahu, the way he wanted it, and convinced the U.S. government and the deep state to be able to have those wars pursued according to Jeffrey Sachs. So if you could find Jeffrey Sachs, he's an internationally renowned economist. I always find him very objective and on target, that he cuts no bones in looking as objectively as he can at the US side, Russia side, China side, because he has worked with all these governments and has advised them.
Yeah.
So, after that, you will see very clearly if the US wants to go to war in Iran, they will start to prepare a propaganda. It will go
narrative.
So that by the time war starts, people will say, this is even the war in Iraq, a war that was done on lies.
Why?
Total lies. Yeah.
Prepared all the media saying the same thing.
Whoa! Have you noticed also, Jeremy, that you remember with the war in Iraq, the man who sold that was Colin Powell.
Yes.
Who got up there.
They
now,
put him
and I'm watching now. You have a lady, the Biden's press
at the United Nations.
No, one at the United Nations too is a black woman.
Yes.
Then there was one, the curly hair one.
Oh, John Pierre, the Haitian American lady, John Pierre.
Okay. What was the name of the one that comes over? And did all the press briefing with the press and what his press.
That's John Pierre.
John Pierre.
Haitian.
Okay, that is the same one. Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. So what they do is they put up a black face, and then the black people are neutralized. Well, we have to we got to involve with but when you look at what the consequence of it is, then you wonder if my boy, really are there still Uncle Toms running around here?
No, I think Powell has been embarrassed about the whole thing because he got set up.
Yep.
He got set up. He spoke about it after coming.
Yeah, but he got set up too easily, man. Now he was out there showing us the picture, and you remember that? But you look at the truck. Here you go. That is full of that. They still have not found one of the weapons used.
And you remember there were U.S. Actually a CIA agent, a woman, who told them it was not true, and they called her out.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
her
They
husband.
really dump on her.
Yeah,
She told them that it wasn't true. A white woman.
yeah. I think her husband was an ambassador. I forgot what he
Yes, that's the woman.
was.
Her
And
husband was an ambassador.
yeah,
Well,
and then, I don't know if it was from Denmark or there's this the UN guy named Hans Blix was telling him all
Yeah,
the time,
But
over
but
and over and
no,
over.
they
but when you want to believe something, you believe it. You know what I'm saying? And
believe me.
they convinced the whole world.
well,
I remember them telling, and that was by they were saying that in Grenada they were locking up people in these metal boxes, which was totally untrue. They were
yes.
talking about the airport being built. It was one of the most popular projects in Grenada at the time.
Oh,
When you poll the people, they knew they needed an international airport. It was popular. But when you listen to the propaganda in the United States
oh, it's vicious.
and in some Caribbean country, they were frightened by it, they were scared by it. But that's how propaganda works.
Let's
I
Yeah.
mean,
see.
we've had it closer to us.
Let's
We've
see
had
how
it
the
in Honduras and Nicaragua and Salvador and Guatemala, going back to the 50s.
let's see how the propaganda work for Panama and Greenland and Canada
Oh, and the Gulf, Trump's Gulf. Because
and
I
the
don't think
Gulf
it'll be the Gulf of America. It'll
of
be
America.
Trump's Gulf. So, where are we? Where are we headed? What do you see for the next 4 years, guys? And I'm hoping. What I'm hoping is that the anti-Trump do not sit around for the whole 4 years waiting for him to feel or call, making him feel it, or declaring a failure when it is not. This is not to say that I don't think that Trump is a dangerous fellow and there are lots of things can happen. But I don't know if sometimes we don't just spend too much time on the last 8 years has been Trump, Even the Biden's years, most of it was spent talking about Trump. We
Yeah,
kept Trump
I'm
alive.
tired of it. Personally, I've had enough of it.
Yeah, but
But I,
geez,
I, I think that for us in Belize, we've got to look on the migration. Watch the patterns.
Yeah, good. Well, good. Are they gonna? But what are we to do now? What is Belize to do? Should we object? Should we say, you know what? Because you know what? All it needs is for a politician to get a certain amount of money, and it done.
Yeah,
Because in particular in Belize now, and I think that the unfortunate thing, because in America you got the Democrats still have a little bit of voice and a little bit of weight, although they not got they don't control any of the major houses. But in Belize we got one government, uh, 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 almost a unicameral house. Um,
mhm.
the 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 UDP is, for all intents and purposes, gone to Ras, and even today we see the news there more at odd than ever before. What are we gonna do? I mean, how do we handle it, Norman? What is your recommendation as far as the immigrants since you're
For me, I think that Belizeans need to unite, and we have three basic minorities within Belize. That they've had to find some ways to work together so that the people next door that will come over will be more in defense of what we have in Belize.
what's your
In,
idea of those three? What's the three? We got Belizeans, we got about Creole. When I say
we
Creole,
have the Spanish, we have Creole, and we have Garifunas.
all right. But so where does
They're
the Chinese and the Mennonites fit in?
they will have to become Belizeans.
Well, all of us has to be
Really become
Belizean.
Belizeans.
Yeah,
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 but
yeah,
I,
yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. Go
But
ahead.
now go ahead. You're up.
Yeah, I think how we look at ourselves as Belizeans differ. It's like a couple of years ago, a naturalized Belizean was saying, "Oh, well, we're Belizean too." because we're, naturalized. They have this whole concept of, like American citizenship and naturalization. But I do think that in the case of Belize, it's not just about getting a piece of paper. It's sort of the generations of Belizeans that go back at least 3 or 4 generation, and the sort of the familial ties that Belizeans have to each other, right?
Hold Jerome, because you're in the States now and you were born in Belize.
Yes.
What are they gonna say to you now over there? Because I don't know if it's not more about assimilation with the whole group and understanding, as Norman said, we're all Belizeans under one flag. It's a one country. We can't get no balkanization. We can't get you like what's happening with the Mayan now. I don't agree with that. I don't think the Mayan should be given any large portion of, and I figure there's a way to deal with that. Is I would say consider how many Mayans are, and then put on part of PG and say, all right, we're gonna get land first. And then later on, if you don't want the communal, we could do that. But can't get no city within the city.
Of course, I disagree with that because
that's all right. Yeah. Give us your point.
Yeah, Jeremy, you're one of the allies of the Mayas, along with other people that I know. However, they haven't been able to sort of foster alliances with Creoles and other ethnic groups within Belize, and that is problematic. As far as I see it, several allies like you that they have.
I see your point with that the importance of establishing alliance for national development, but it does not negate their right and their right that they already asserted and won in court for the
no point to the court case because that was a travesty.
Yeah, I don't know. It's 3 court cases: Supreme Court, the appeals,
Caribbean
court. So it has been litigated. The conclusion has been made.
But not really. They said go home and work it out amongst yourself. That's
but then it's still based on what the court has decided, that there is rights for all indigenous people. So
at the end of the day, Jeremy, aren't we all indigenous? My bad.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, there is the courts has asserted and ruled, and based on international law, based on the Constitution of Belize, that there is a right of indigenous people to the communal ownership of their land, and it is not a strange concept. For example, the Mennonites have their collective ownership of the land, even though they bought it. Still, it is the same principle. They have a portion of land in which they want to practice their traditions and culture, and so it was what the Mayas were doing over in their communities from way back when, and it was threatened by Malaysian loggers by the government, who granted Malaysian loggers the rights to go and slash forests in these communities without even consulting. And so that gave birth to the people saying, we need to find corrective ways in which we are consulted in ways that it does not destroy what we are used to, our way of life. Similarly, that will be done with the Bogian Card Mennonites, with even American investors who come and buy thousands of acres.
All right. But, and I understand. You wrap that up though, because at the end of the day, the Mayans used to sacrifice people too. Are we going to let them do that still? Because that's what they used to do.
No. That does not fit in those kinds of.
It fits right in because we are all indigenous. All of them come here when we're born.
But the thing, the sacrificing of people was an ancient history. That inserting that into the discussion is kind of distorting who they are without understanding.
So how far back are we going with them as far as the indigenous? Where you say that we're part of the thing from ever since, because you went back now.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that that's what they're doing today. But I'm saying the volume of evidence has been presented in the court. That was not a part of it, because that was not relevant. It was not a current practice. We need to understand those ways of life. And what I find very interesting is that those same kinds of arguments are not being applied to thousands of acres that are being owned by foreign interests in Belize, thousands of acres that are blocked off as protected areas, thousands of acres for the Mennonites, and all of those.
But you're using one thing to justify the other, Germany. That's not a good argument.
Saying the court has decided is very clear. There's no justification.
But you keep pointing to that court. Conte was a sellout.
But the Caribbean Court of Justice, at what point?
Just went ahead and said, you know what? All right, don't do it. Go home and do it. That I think that I don't get much.
No, I don't think you understand the context in the international convention.
What did the court do, Jeremy? You said, Jerome, where you start? That you start this. No hide your hand.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jerry. Explain it. Because you're the try, but you're not the get that. I am not being convinced. I'm telling you the truth.
I can't convince you if you are already convinced in the way you want to think. But
I'm listening to you. I am willing to.
I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying.
Not dismiss it like that.
I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying these are the facts. This is what exists. Some people do not like it, but then that doesn't change the reality. You even assert
the fact you're pointing to is that the court gave them the right. 3 courts, you're saying.
You're not gave them the right.
What gave them the right then?
Rights. We have rights by virtue of who we are about in the country.
Who they are is what? Indigenous people.
The courts, the 3 courts protected those rights that were.
Those rights were what? What were those rights that they were protected?
Those are inherent rights. Human rights.
We all have those. I ban you. I'm a born Belizean. No born Belizean has no right other than me. And in fact, I got some Maya in me. Well, give me mine then. Give me mine.
What is your point?
My point is that we shouldn't be identifying or putting aside any specific person and saying, oh, you got more right than we because you were here before us. I mean, we all count the same way.
Jeremy, I think one of the things, although you've emphasized all the courts and the international law, is that within each Belizean is that we have this idea of pluralism, right, in Belize about different groups that make up Belize, in particular the ones that have been there in the country for a long time. And George Price was sort of kind of fashioned this pluralism a lot that we now have, right? And even we celebrated his birthday, what was it, on the 15th? And to this question that we're dealing with right now, we could ask about this Mayan land rights question. What would George Price do, or what would George Price say about it?
I'll tell you what he would do. He allowed the Mennonites to come to Belize and establish their community in Spanish Lookout, in all these other things. That is what he did in respecting their way of life as they, as a community, wanted to live. That is what he did.
All right. Didn't the Mennonites have contributed into agriculture? They've gone far than I would have let them. But I'm saying they contributed.
The Mayas and southern Belize used to be the bread basket of Belize.
Used to be, or is to be, or what? Say it again.
It used to be the bread basket with rice, with pork, a lot of these things.
But was that stopped or thwarted in any way by any move that was done to try to deny Mayans from owning that area of land? Is that what you're saying?
I don't get the point that you're trying to drive up. Because
no, I'm asking you a question. There's not a point, because you're saying it used to be the bread basket. It used to produce all the rice that we eat. I'm wondering if that was stopped because of us denying them specific amount of land back there, over there. They stopped doing that themselves. Christina Cook don't plant.
Come on, G. Mike, I think you're getting hyper. Let me put it again. Let me say this very clearly. The reason the rice industry stopped was more economic at the price of the weather conditions at the time, and they had to move the rice mill to Belize City. There were a whole heap of other things. So I responding to you saying the Mennonites plan. I was just showing that in South we also planted. There was a period of time the Mennonites now brought, but the point to Jerome's question, what would George Price do? I answered is what did he do to show that there is respect for the way that people want to live? If G. Mike forms a group with his family and say, my family and my extended family wants, we are planting this land, this is the way we live as a family, we want to protect this right, then that is a right that needs to be protected.
But Jeremy, how can we do that? That is unrealistic. We're going to do that for everybody that wants to do that then? Because we got them to do it. Now, you're saying, you're pointing to what Josh Price did with the Mennonites. But the Mennonites aren't indigenous for sure. They just come out one group of people and Josh Price say, well, all right, we think you're going to be good for the country because we want people to want to plant, which might be awful. Plus, we don't have enough people, and that might be it now. That might be the question.
So why is it good for the Mennonites and not for those?
I'm not saying it's good for the Mennonites. I think the Mennonites should assimilate also with the community.
Doing, but then the way of life that they want is what
I would have
also the question. It answers.
But that not got nothing to do with what they want, Jeremy. What I got to do with that?
That's what George Price did. I'm answering the question of what for Jerome. What would he do?
But see, you're not coming up with any original point. You're looking at what the court did. You're looking at what Josh Price did. You're not looking at what the Mennonites did. What are we supposed to do?
Jerome asked the question.
Well, just ignore Jerome. Well, we don't answer him. He got mischief. He the cause mischief, man.
But I think
he try to set you up, Jeremy.
No.
Catch up on the ropes.
I think we're at the point where we need to understand we're at a point where we have to be unified. We have to have people who will protect the sovereignty of the country.
I agree.
We can't be talking about creating, we're going to bring in some Salvadorians and we send them to Salvapan, and we're bringing some Guatemala and we keep them in the south. We can't do that. Going forward, we have to have a strategy that will bring us closer together in the same way that those of us who live abroad want to be brought into that process.
All right. Now, I believe we have enough in the diaspora, enough Belizeans in the diaspora that could come to Belize and make a big difference. Grow, because we're not the backward country that we were once. We have opportunity. We're lacking in a lot, which is a part of what the diaspora could bring in. You see what I'm saying? But go ahead, Jeremy.
That's something that I wanted to also look at.
Wait, you know, Jerome over there, the crack up boy. I don't know what you doing here. But mute your mic, Jerome. Come here. There's no. Oh my goodness, the man.
Part of the new challenges that Belize will face is if there is mass deportation of people into Belize, the diaspora, for example, they will bring their way of life that they're used to in the United States. There's an adjustment to make socially, psychologically, as they move back to the country. One of the challenges is how will the country manage through those kinds of expectations, demands, or even the adjustment that people returning home for permanently, how will they manage through that? That is something that will have implications to...
May I make a point here?
Yeah.
Because I hear you and you're worrying about how they're going to do it. We need to establish here a protocol. We need to know what has to be done, and whoever comes will have to fall in line with that. We cannot bend to everybody. And you know what? I lived in the U.S. and I saw this in my early years up there. I saw when I lived in New York City, right? I saw somebody got one mic on in the background that's distracting us. See why I don't know if there's a mic on in the studio, but I hear ya. Are you guys hearing this too? But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm saying I lived in New York first, and I went to LA and spent some time, and I saw a difference in that in New York. When you go to New York, you fit in with the culture in New York. When we went to LA, and it seemed like everybody was fitting in to who was there. The guy believe air pockets and whatnot, and I don't know if they're not the same thing with the face with the police. And I believe that the best way to go is that we have established some we got with laws and whatnot, we got with customs, and people have to fall in line with what's best for us.
Well, the other thing too in falling in line, will we have a kind of pool of jobs to accommodate the newcomers? So what kind of investment will be needed? What can they bring also to Belize when they return to be able to sustain their lives? All of those kinds of things will be a part of the dynamic, the social and economic dynamic when they return home, especially if they're deported and they're not prepared to live back home, prepared financially. They might be cut off from a job that they might be hoping to earn some kind of pension later, and then that is cut and they're returned home. So there will be some stress to try to manage, and the policies that we put in place we should be considerate of those kinds of things.
All right, you're talking about the Belizean diaspora that might
Yes,
be
I'm talking
deported to
about
Belize.
those. Yeah.
Naman was suggesting that maybe we need to be prepared for other nationalities because
That's
Trump
even
is start,
progressive.
they might load us up with that too, no? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
and maybe we have to start to look at it, and maybe we have to start to develop one plan, but a plan that will work for Belize, not for the individuals coming in or whatever groups they belong to. And I agree with you. We can't bring the Spanish from Salvador to go to Salvapan, or the ones from Honduras to go to areas where they are. And the balkanization, when they look for deal, but this is exactly why I disagree with the Mayan concept of it.
Well, for
Assimilate,
for
grow up.
for the deportees, I imagine they will move where the jobs are, where the opportunities are. So it is not that they will decide to be placed in different areas. Wherever they could use their skills that they have, and wherever that they could be employed with those skills, I believe that's where they're going to move, and that's going to create the balance that we're talking about.
Here's something you need to look at too, is that the ones that are coming back will not necessarily, at least the first one, will not be the skilled ones. Will be the ones who have
Yeah.
been over there roaming the streets, smoking crack, drinking rum, and giving trouble. That the coin, because
That's
that
the
and I agree with Trump on that. Because if we believes, if people from Honduras, Salvador, and Guatemala come and start to no one produce the just as the create crime and whatnot, we would like to run them out too. So I don't got no problem with nationalism. I really think that if, in fact, I remember watching a caravan going up to America with about that one 150,000 people one spell coming going from a substantial amount, and I'm like, that many people could make a difference in your own home.
Yeah.
Just put your voice together and demand better of the government that's over there, but for run from it and run to somewhere else, and where you know where you're going, and then get over there, no opportunities, so you have to be a burden on their welfare system, because eventually we'll have to create something like that also to keep people. We can't make them dead and starve, no?
the
So
reality. Then the reality is that we also have a porous border. So those who are, let's say, deported to Guatemala, of course, will be able to speak English very well, and they slide into Belize.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's going to, as Jeremy has stated, there's the Belizeans returning, as you mentioned, G. Mike. It's the ones that perhaps don't have any sort of human capital or limited capital. They're semi-skilled, they're unskilled. And then there are the other groups that might be deported immigrants who are not from Belize, that decided that, you know what, I'm not going to go all the way back to Brazil or all the way back to Africa or whatever. They might want a chance to return to the United States, maybe not during the Trump's presidency, but at some other time. The other thing I think we often don't really discuss whenever we talk about Belizean immigrants is that a significant number of first and second generation Belizean, Central Hondurans, and so on did leave and come to the United States in recent years. I met a lot of people who were born in Belize, of Salvadoran parents, of Honduran parents, of Guatemalan parents. They probably lived in Belize one generation, and then they moved on to the United States, right? And that's
just to top of that, a lot of the immigrants, it seems to me, even when I go to the graduation of UB and see how many immigrants are graduating, and primarily women, a lot of them come to Belize to eventually come north. They get to speak English, they get a little more skilled at how to adjust in America. So fortunately for Belize, they didn't seem like they really want to stay in Belize. But that will change. And two things. One, the Belizeans, the young Belizeans, that's where our answer is, in the youth of Belize. We have a lot of Belizeans, my age and older, who have been in America, have worked off the books, so they have no social security. Two consul generals, one in New York, Longsworth, who is in Belize right now, and York in LA, told me of Belizeans being picked up by the police, and they were being contacted to see what you're going to do with these guys. So that's a reality that has been going on, and it's hidden. But that's a reality that we have a generation that came, maybe the generation before I came in the late 60s, but a generation that came before that thought it was smart to work off the books, don't have no social security, no monies to make. They have, I
There'll
mean,
be a burden on the social system.
Pardon me?
There'll be a burden on the social infrastructure
Exactly.
of Belize.
So as Belize talk about people settling in Belize, they better see that whoever is financing it, do something about our healthcare system, do something about our educational system, do something about housing, that they just don't accept it like that guy that they sent from Cuba and settle him in Belize. Don't know what all the deals were. We don't want too many things like that done. We've got to have a plan. If we don't have a plan, we will be worse off than the Palestinians. The Palestinians don't have right of return. They don't have anything.
You got no country even where they lived,
and you have people who are occupying their land and have taken more and more, have done it like the original people who came to America, who virtually kill off people and took their land.
Well,
this is what Israel see, and this is what's in some people's mind when they talk about coming to your country.
Now, man, and get back to where they talk about over there. That one playbook on colonization it happened in Australia in 1901. It happened here in America in 1492. It happened in 1948, and that is the same playbook that they're using. But I don't think that in this day and age it should be allowed to happen. Not with the world looking on with social media. I don't think they factored in social media when they started out to do what they were going to do, but they decided they're going to do it anyway. Because for the most part, people have short memories. We will live through it. We will reel up for a while, and then we'll move on and forget about it. And they will wind up having that land. The question: are we going to have a two-state solution or a one-state solution in Palestine?
Oh, they plan to have a one state.
Well, the greater state of Israel, of course.
Yeah.
But I think that state should be Palestine. And
I think so too.
it
But
was already
we're a
there.
minority point of view.
Boy, that is true. And without the force to enforce. So listen.
You had no bigger voices than President Carter.
Oh man,
Bishop
did you
Tutu
hear his
saying that Palestine is like a camp? It's worse than apartheid.
Yeah.
The way they've taken people place and the way that they run things.
And the settlers just do what they want, and nobody. Who you gonna complain to? You know how many there will be a new generation in Palestine of the mixed breed, because those Israeli soldiers have been raping those young girls, man, and it's a shame. Because what they gonna do with how they gonna hide that? You can't police think that size of army there, and they go talk. Oh, we have the most humane army. We do things, my boy. Really.
The value of propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, the Israelis still pretend to be victims.
Exactly.
Never again.
The propaganda that struck me the most was the one when and Sitting Bull brought it to the president of the United States attention, and he say, Mr. President, they say, how come every time you win, it's a victory, but every time we win, now a massacre?
Yeah.
And that just the speech, the way that they use the words, it just, and the swear, the opinion of the people, even the oppressed, are impressed with the propaganda that they give.
Oh, yeah.
Gentlemen, it's 9:23. Let's go to 9:30. We usually only do 2 hours. No. Why not? Don't work me too hard, man. I need a raise. See why?
I agree with you.
What you right now?
Better talk to CY.
CY phone. There's somebody ring phone.
DJ, are you done mixing yet?
Your DJ has only just.
Hello. Hello. Yeah. No man. Listen, guys. Let's call it an evening, man. It's been fun. It's been education and enlightening. And thanks a lot, Jeremy. We have to mix it up again some more until I could be able to convince you that you're wrong. But I'm kidding. I'm joking after. I don't.
Whenever you bring him back, bring Christina again. I love the
boy. You know what? Make that
our presentation.
You know when make them two double bank me. We bring one at a time because he and Christina are of like mind. So I wouldn't stand a chance.
Disagree with some of the points she make, but just love how she talks about the issue.
But I tell you, I like Christina Chuck. I love Christina. I think she's so intelligent and so cool. She has a way, and she will charm you into giving her way. I don't agree that the Mayan should be given a big portion of Toledo. I think they already have Belize, so they understand. Don't get all the Belize. On the indigenous, we are given that right also.
Mike, one of the things I still remain steadfast to a lot of things. Some of the positions that you put forth, but I've kind of changed in terms of they should get sort of a greater part, some communal land in the district. What my objection is the extent to which the size and scope of sort of how much land they should be given.
What are they going to do? What are they going to plant? Are they going to plant? Okay, if they're going to plant, I could deal with that. That's just like the Mennonites in Spanish code. Are they going to plant, or they just want this for say this for me? I can't come out.
It's not only about planting; it's about hunting, as they have stated. We use the river for bathing. I mean, Christina.
But nobody's stopping that. Nobody. You could go down there and bathe if you want. Well, they might have tire like they did the fellow. Remember the guy who had the
Miles? Is it Rupert Miles?
Rupert Miles, man, you may know.
I want to put if I may. Oh, sorry.
No, that's a plug he's putting in for me. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I want to put a historical context to this based on what you said earlier about the playbook. And this is very important because as yesterday or the day before, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines pledged in the National Assembly to reacquire Baliseo as a natural heritage for the Garifuna people who were in Baliseo in 1796. There was a mass genocide of Garifuna people. Why? The British wanted to plant sugar on the lands that they lived in and occupied as a people. A foreign power wanted to claim that land and say, well, you all have no right for your way of life and your way of living.
Same playbook.
Same playbook. Let me finish. They went and they slaughtered Garifuna people and moved them forcibly from their land. That is the playbook of colonialism.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think of those kinds of, when we came to Belize, we also faced mass discrimination by our own African brothers because they were influenced by the British to do the same. So we see this kind of playbook internationally. We see, and so that is why the Constitution protects people.
Those British were some sons of bitches, weren't they?
There's an addition to what you said about the Prime Minister of St. Vincent.
Yes.
He also opposed giving Belizeans, Garifunas, title to the land.
Yes.
He will use it as a place of spiritual significance, but he will not give Belizeans citizenship and title to the land.
Right, but
he said that openly.
Yes, because it's ancestral, communal.
And you could, but what about the rest of St. Vincent? Because Jeremy, if you're going to use the argument you're using, then you should be able to go to St. Vincent and settle. Can you do that?
It's not to go and settle. It is more for us to be able to reconnect with our. It is a natural heritage.
They're using it as a retreat, as you could go there and retreat and
there are bones of the ancestors. There is a historical significance. But the point is, the playbook that was used to expel and exterminate Garifuna people is a playbook that is a subtext in many of discussions against the rights of indigenous people.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, you should not. No, that's not. You're not. You're showing that in there. No, you are trying to justify another argument with a weak one.
Facts and truth matter. It is dangerous when we take our own perceptions and we try to consolidate.
No. But you're conflating two different things.
No. If you don't understand it, it's fine. But we have
no. It's not about understanding, because we could talk that for now till forever, and I can't see no understanding coming from that, neither from you, me, nor you. What you are saying is that this playbook for colonization is the same thing as we use to not want to give these Mayans this amount of land in PG. It is not. There's a totally different argument.
I'm saying some of the text, some of the subtext in some of the discussions, the broad sweeping.
You'd have to point those out. I don't see that. All I'm saying, we should not have balkanization in any country.
Even
that was also George Price's point of view.
No, that's Said Musa used balkanization.
Said used Musa.
And he did it erroneously. Because this is in no way represent any balkanization. As I said, the courts have examined very carefully
Jeremy, you have taken up this fight and you're sticking with it to the end.
The court has ruled. The court has ruled on it, and I'm going on the basis of what the ruling is.
The court has ruled so many things now that's questionable. I won't.
No, you're going after. First, you went after Conte. And then now
the whole court, yes.
But gentlemen, one more. Next time we gather, Jerome might know some more about this. And Jeremy, the people who settled in the south of Belize in PG were a lot of the rebels from the United States.
That is correct.
How did they fit in with the Mayans, and how the Mayans claimed to all this land settled with them? Because the train operation was brought by those Yankees.
And with the East India, how do you see East Indians fit in?
Again, Jeremy, this is where the discussion about indigeneity comes in, right? At the time that the Southerners settled in PG, there were very few villages, Mayan villages, in the district.
Not after they don't kill them, for sure.
The sort of 1880s people always talk about, especially Ketchy and some Mopan returning to the to Punta Gorda after not Punta Gorda but Toledo after the 1880s, right? And that's where a lot of people aren't convinced in terms of the arguments of
authenticity of it, yeah.
And the articles that Richard Wilk has written himself that placed their return in the 1880s to Punta Gorda, not Punta Gorda, but Toledo.
I like
two Mayan villages at that time, you know, when the Americans settled in the district.
How do the East Indians fit in? Because there's quite a substantial
indentured servant.
I like the word that Jerome used, which was very pivotal in the case. Also, the word return. That's an important word to consider in the whole discussion too. But you know, I'm really running out of time. But what I came here for was also not at the
argument. You're running out the argument too.
No. I have other. I didn't expect.
I'm sure. Listen,
I also came. I thought I was going to discuss the redistricting issue for election, the redivisioning of malapportioned electoral divisions. So that's what I was invited for also. But we run out of time, so hopefully we'll have another discussion.
But I'll tell you what. I really enjoyed the discussion that we did have. And yes, let us do that another time, please, because that in itself is important also. Yeah, but the guys, it's been enlightening. You guys are awesome. Let's do it again. Now, this for the plug for me. I'm doing a fundraising for this. And the doctor was talking about the situation. No, next week I'm leaving for Mexico on Tuesday. I don't know what the internet situation is going to be in Mexico, because I've had conversations with people there and it's kind of sporadic. I'm hoping that it'll be enough that I can be back on, but if I'm not, I'm hoping that you guys can jump in here and fill in, man, because there's a lot to talk about, and without me for the disruption or whatnot, there'll be more that you'll get more said. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Jerome,
the DJ accepts no responsibility for the next record. This is a request.
Real pleasure.
Yo, what the baddest mix this? No man, not tell me nothing.
Take it away, Siwa.
Racism is alive and well. If we as black people and people of color don't get ourselves together, you know, form some kind of unification, you know, foundation with the talk economically to this called capitalism business. It's real. Listen to me, Lord. Racial profiling. It's a serious thing. A bird without wing. Racial profiling. Listen, me king, this on your top of ranking. Racial profiling. It's a serious thing. A bird without wing. Racial profiling. I saw the thing said in a this system. I cannot breathe. Living while black, much less gonna Starbucks. Living while black, up against the clan. Living while black, life in my hand. Living while black, column masking we under constant attack. Master race, master plan, the drive me hold me back. Smoke it on, little rhythm, give me one drop. Your movements, they just can't stop. I cannot sell water as a POC. Hermit party will call the COP. I cannot enter a pool as a POC. Pool patrol parlor calling the COP. If I am grilling in the park as a POC, see barbecue, Betty will call it COVID. If I check into an AR and B, my persuasion cannot be a for POC. Racial profiling. Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the ways of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Glorify his name, me brethren. Glorify his name, me brethren. Let we come together and blow fire upon it. Let we come together and blow fire upon it. Don't they worry about your house, your pretty car, or your bling. Don't they worry about your house, your pretty car.